All right, hi everyone. So my session is from Made to Meaningful, Driving Compliant On-Brand AI with Context. I am supposed to follow up PAMs and then Overstock. Not easy, but let's try and do that. My name is Suchi Garg and I have been working with Drupal since 2006. Started with Drupal 4.2, which shows my age, but okay. Currently I'm working with Salsa Digital as a web app team manager. I also do tech lead for a lot of projects. My social media handle is Garg Suchi, and it's almost everywhere on LinkedIn, on Drupal.org, on mostly the Drupal Slack as well. And this is a QR code for my LinkedIn if anybody wants to look me around. So what I have done is, and I'll be talking a bit fast, we can leave the questions to the end because I thought my talk was 45 minutes. Yesterday I found out it's 30 minutes, so I'm talking very fast now. So what I have split my session into two parts. In the first part, I'll be talking about the Context Control Center, the CCC, the what, the why, and about the module and how it works. And the second part is the more exciting part, the demo, where I'll be walking through a typical page building exercise using Canvas AI and how adding context can improve the output iteratively. So let's start with what's CCC. But before we start that, can I see a show of hands of how many of you actually saw the Dries note on Chicago DrupalCon? All right, some, sure. CCC was demoed there. In fact, CCC was demoed in featured a bit in Vienna DrupalCon as well. And when I say CCC, I mean the module. It's the AI context module, which is also called the Context Control Center, and hence CC. You can see the link of the module on the slide on the screen there. So the whole aim of the module is to bring order. It is very important that the module serves as for non-technical users who can easily add their context without really need to know anything about AI or anything technical. But it is also very useful for your technical users, so that your developers basically, so that you can extend the module and make it more useful for your use cases. So CCC is meant to be a place where it's serving usability and developer experience both. And as the slide says, AI context, it helps your Drupal site's AI use your content, rules, and terminology, so it delivers more accurate and relevant results. So in very short, the module actually creates an entity. And when I say entity, I'm sure the devs around here will understand what an entity is. So this module creates an entity called context item, and then naturally it comes with all the accompanying features that Drupal provides. So what that means, it comes with moderation, it comes with revisioning, it comes with scheduling. You might say, why are we doing scheduling for context? It might be useful for maybe cases like campaigning, context around campaigns. It comes with multilingual, which is great. So context actually supports multilingual. And it also comes with a WYSIWYG editor, which actually supports Markdown. So why does context actually matter? So the answer in short is no slop. If you have no context or bad context, then you feed that to an AI agent, you are going to get guessy, generic garbage. We have seen, all of us most would have seen AI going crazy and hallucinating like crazy. And if you have seen the Dries note, we don't want slop, right? This is like our end goal, no slop. So in order to not get slop, you have to look at your context. And when I say your context, you have to look at the things that make sense for your organization, your agency, your brand, and then put that into a system. And then when you feed that into appropriate agents, the outputs that come out are more accurate, authentic, aligned. That's what happens. So you don't get slop, you get good stuff. And we will be seeing this in the demo as well. So let's now talk about what are the types of context. Again, I'm going through this very, very quickly because I think the demo is a more interesting part you will be interested in, at least I would be interested more in that. So some types of context would be, for example, content creation and structure, or marketing and outreach context, or maybe the knowledge and domain, or maybe your governance, trust, and compliance. And this slide gives you some examples of context as well. So as I said, the examples, the contexts are basically extracted from your unique knowledge base. So the examples of context can be your audience personas. They can be pricing and packaging, or partners list, or campaign briefs, or maybe ally standards, compliance rules, writing rules, editorial guide, language rules, taglines, etc., etc. So what are the big features of this module? The first one is, of course, context management. Naturally, it's context control center. It has to manage context, right? So what it gives, as I mentioned earlier, it gives us context items with moderation, revisioning, da-da-da, everything that Drupal provides. The second thing it comes with is scope. I think the scope is the most useful part of this, of the context control center as well. So this way we can actually limit each context to a specific scope. Scope is very, very useful. So we can categorize context by use case, by language, tags, sections, etc. I will be giving, there's another slide which talks about context scope next. But for example, in my demo, I'm actually building a page. But the context I'm building is I'm saying build a page, build a session page. So the scope of my context is session page and nothing else. Don't apply this context when you're creating a generic page or a blog post, etc., etc. Then this module also comes with something called subcontext. Subcontext is generally not used a lot. If you have a lot of context, it just allows you to organize your context properly. So as an example, you might have you might have a list of context for branding. So that would be your major context, and then a subcontext will be, this is the branding for general page, this is the branding for blog, or maybe branding is a wrong example, the content structure. So you can apply subcontext, and subcontext allows you to have a hierarchy, a one child hierarchy, not a multi-hierarchy thing. Then agent context selection. So right now, context control center only applies to AI agents. It doesn't apply yet to AI automators and chains, etc. So, but what it allows is you to, when you create a context, you can associate with an agent, and then via scopes you can define, you can tell the agent pick this context only within the scope, and what are the different scope areas. The module also gives an admin experience, so there is a very lightweight dashboard which has usage tracking. It also has access control and configurable settings for scopes, etc. And then, of course, it comes with a dev experience. So to make this useful for tech and non-tech audience, as a dev, you can expand the context. It comes with debugging tools, comprehensive test, coverage, etc. So as I said, context scope is probably the most important part. Context, of course, but the scope is very, very important. So let's talk a little bit about the scope concept. Scope is basically adding some criteria around your context. So the most general one would be global context, the global scope, sorry, not context, global scope. A note here though, use this very, very sparingly. So because the idea of global, that it would apply to every single prompt that you are using on the site. So it needs to be ideally small and something that needs to be applied literally everywhere. So for example, a list of cuss words that we don't want to use on your site, so that might be a global scope. Then there's something called use cases. They are also part of scope. So out of the box, Canvas AI and this module, they comes with two scopes, writing words and working in Canvas, but as a dev, you can go ahead and extend the scopes. It also comes with tags. So in order to categorize and organize your context, you can actually associate it as a free tagging thing. There is a dedicated vocabulary in Drupal, which is used for this tagging. There is a concept of also scoping using target entities. So you can actually say, okay, this particular context applies to only my privacy policy page or only to this particular taxonomy term. Then there is also a scoping based on site sections. When we say site sections, it actually means path-based context. So we can say that this context actually applies to all the paths or all the pages which have this particular URL /blogs/ something or /about us/ something. So this is a path-based context. And language is very self-explanatory. And then with the release of Beta 2, Beta 2 was actually released just this Monday. With the release of Beta 2, we also have an option of scoping using entity bundles. So now you can create a scope and where you can say that this context will apply when we are creating content of the type blogs, or we are creating a taxonomy of this particular vocabulary, etc. As I said, subcontext, I'll walk you very quickly through this. This particular screenshot is actually from the Dries node, and you can see that there are two main subcontexts, and below them there are subcontexts. There are two types of subcontext, the required and the conditional. So the one with these ones are required, and these ones are optional based on the context scope, basically. So how does the agent context selection actually work? So user adds a prompt and sends that to an agent, and then agent looks at the context, it tries to find context, and then it looks at the selection logic, and the context is included only if relevant. And how does it decide whether it's relevant or not? These are the different criteria based on which it decides. Is it published? Is it always included? Is it global? Does it match target? So basically, does the scope apply to it or not? And there is also a criteria about max tokens and max total items. The good things about context, they are very extensible. As a developer, you can extend the context using custom modules or contributing modules. As an example, you can add more use cases or may add more scope plugins. So it is possible that in your particular project, you might need to create a context that is based on user role. So you can go ahead and create a scope for user roles and say, okay, this context can only apply when the user is of this particular role. So context items are pretty flexible that way. So as I said, yes, you can add use cases, you can add scope plugins, and modify context too, of course. I'll also very quickly talk about the roadmap. As I said, Beta 2 was just released on Monday, and this is the roadmap in June to 2026. The aim is to do a 1.0 release, which will have all of these, and in September, the aim is to do a 1.1 release. One of the very important, I would say, things in this one would be that you can actually, if you look at this one, you can actually import context using PDFs and URLs, etc., which is, I think, which would be a very good thing to do. So if you have a PDF of your brand guidelines, you can just import that, and it creates context out of that. So if you leave this talk with one thing today, the apparent AI magic in the demos that we look at next, they don't come from the AI. They come from all the human effort that goes into making good context for the AI to draw from. So I can't stress this enough. We all talk about AI and it will take over mankind, whatever. But it has to happen with human intervention. We can't use AI effectively unless and until human intervention is there. I would also recommend everyone, so for whoever has not watched the Dries node, please go ahead and watch the DrupalCon Chicago Dries node. All right, now demo time. I think this is the one I'm more excited about, and I'm pretty sure you would be. So what did I start off with? Earlier, Pam and Owen both talked about site templates, so I actually used that. So I installed Canvas locally using a site template called Convene, and out of the box, it gave me a conference website with basic modules enabled. And then I went ahead and installed these modules Of course, AI, because we're talking about AI, and the highlighted one is AI context. If you also look at the other ones, these are the providers, OpenAI and QuantCloud. These are the providers I'm using. All right, so now we are ready to start playing. I've embedded a video here because doing a live demo with AI, no, I'm not that brave. So I'll start with showing, I'm showing you the prompt that I've put in Canvas AI. So basically we are building a page in Canvas AI, and this is the prompt. Please build a session page. This is the heading of the page. This is the broad body of the session, and this is some more information about the session where it says its time is Thursday, 14th of May, 10:30. There's a room and there's a track. So I'm giving this information to Canvas AI, and let's see what it builds. I'll try to make it full screen. Okay. I'll also forward this a bit because it takes a lot of time, but here I have pasted my prompt, and I'm trying to see stuff here. I've entered the prompt, and it starts. It will start to build the page, and first it will start to think. It thinks a lot. So it says thinking. Sure, go ahead and think. Now, when we install Canvas AI, it automatically comes with a few agents which go ahead and create the page title. When I say page title, I'm talking about the page meta title. So that's what it shows here, that I'm creating a page title, and then I'm thinking some more. And I'll try to just forward this a bit more because we need to finish on time. All right, so it's gone ahead and created something for me, right? So it's gone ahead and created a page for me, and if you look at it, it's not a bad page. It has a title, the way I gave it. It has some information, and then it went ahead and created those little cards at the bottom as well. So it tried to do something smart, and it has also gone ahead and created a page title and meta description. So meta title and meta description. I'll go ahead and save this and publish this page so that we can look at this page without the Canvas interface. So here I'm publishing it. I'm going back to the page listing. This is the new page that has been created. Not a bad page. It's okay. So now as an iteration, we'll go ahead and start improving the page. Okay. So now we'll start building context. I will start very, very simple. As I said, there is always an agent that allows you to build page title, the meta title. So let's say that your company policy says that all meta titles need to be title case and not sentence case. It might be your policy, that's fine. We're just doing a demo. So this is the new context that now I have added. It has a title, it has some description, and then if you look at the actual content, I have added two rules. One is the case rule, another one is the length rule. So the case rule says that all the titles need to be only title case, not sentence case. I've added something about the heading as well. So heading is what shows on the page, title is the meta title. And I've also added a length rule saying the title has to be between 3 to 15 words. It cannot be beyond that. The heading has to be between 3 to 10 words. And then we have to associate this context to an AI agent. The way we do that is we find the agent, which is the Drupal Canvas title generation agent here. And then when we edit that, at the very bottom, we see the context control option. And there we can associate it with the new context that we have created. Please note that I'm saying that always include context item here. This is not normally the best way. You should be using the other option, but this is a demo, so I'm just including it. And now let's try again. This is a prompt that I'm putting in, very similar prompt, but different content, because I don't want the AI cached version of stuff. Okay, so here we go. I'll just full screen this one once again. And again, similar stuff. I'll be pasting my prompt here, and I'll submit that, and if you see the title I've put in is not title case. And then it started thinking, and it will actually pick up the context as well. Sorry, I'll need to forward this a bit more because I don't have a lot of time. But let's see what's happened. So it has gone ahead and created the title for me, the meta title. It did not create the page for me because of my tokens had expired, so please ignore that. Let's focus on the meta title itself. But if you look at the meta title, it's actually gone ahead and picked that context and said, okay, it has to be a title case and not sentence case. Okay? All right. Now let's, it doesn't let me go beyond, yeah. So let's start adding more complex context to the site. I will, again, quickly walk through them. The first one I'm adding is for context for spellings. So the context for spellings is not very complex. It's pretty simple, saying, use Australian and New Zealand spellings. We don't want American spellings. We don't want American anything, pretty much. So we don't want American spellings here. And then I am adding one more very complex context, and I'll walk you through that. This is the content structure of the session page. So this is the name and description. But if you look at the actual content here, that's what's important. If you look at this, this has a few parts. So the core rules are always put your stuff in the content area. Do not put that in header and footer, right? And then there is all SDC grid components should have a border of 32 pixels. The width of the SDC grid should be 80%. Lists, so if the user has inputted star, 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 convert that into a list. Don't just smush it together. And if the person has inputted spaces, line breaks, add them as actual BRs. Don't just smush it all together. And then at the bottom, we have the top two bottom sections where we are also saying whether this section is required or not required. So for example, heading is top, use the SDC component. Within the SDC grid, use the typography component. Then we have the title info, use the SDC grid and 3 cards, and so on and so forth. And we are also saying what is required and what is not required. So this is another context that we have added. There's another very important context that we need to add, which basically tells the AI what is the, how does the AI handover need to happen, the context handover needs to happen. So which defines the guidelines for AI integration. This is the name and purpose, but the most important part is this content. So if you start looking here, it says whenever you're building a page, always include this one. And then for session pages, as an example, you need to have a speaker information. You need to have session information. If this information is not provided, stop and ask for it. Do not generate the page just like that. So that way, the input is much more structured. So if you look at response pattern for input, missing inputs, it actually say if you don't find input, you have to actually say, got it. Before I go ahead and give me some details, etc. So this is another context that I have added. So now that we have added the context, the next step, of course, add it to the AI agents. So I have gone ahead and added to the, this one is for the Drupal page builder agent. So I've gone ahead and added that. There is also a readability one. We don't have time to talk about that, so let's skip that. So in the dashboard, you can also see a full listing like this of the agents, and it tells you how many contexts are actually associated. Okay, now let's the Canvas AI again. And this is the prompt, very similar. And you can see I have given it the speaker info. I have given it a bulleted list as well. And if you see here, I have put in some American spellings, the colors and analyze. These are American spellings. So here's colors and here's analyze. Alrighty, now let's start checking it out again. Again, I'll just paste it and I'll really forward it because as we know, we don't have a lot of time. Sorry, too much forward. All right. So it has now started creating the page for me. Right? So now we start looking at stuff. If you start seeing that the stars, they have been converted into bulleted lists, just as we told it. In the earlier page that we created, the line breaks were not actually put as BRs, but in this case, it has gone ahead and do that. And if you look at the spellings, the colors, and the analyze, the spellings have automatically changed to Australian spellings, Australian/New Zealand spellings. I'm in New Zealand, I should remember that. So we have done that, right? So now if you look at the output, that the page that AI has created, the structure is much better. And let's look at the component tree as well. So if you look at that, the headline is actually SDC grade. And within SDC grade, I told it to use typography, and it has gone ahead and done that, you know. And similarly, it has gone ahead and for the information session, it's gone ahead and done that SDC grid with 3 columns, and within the columns, we are using some kind of vertical cards, and so on and so forth. So I'll just, again, we will save this page, publish this page, and we'll also see it like this, probably. I'm sorry. Yeah, this is the page. And as you can see, this is a much better page because we had provided our context to AI to now it's generating not slop, but an actual proper page that we wanted. I could also have done the preview button, which allows us to check the page on desktop, tablet, mobile, etc. So that was pretty much my demo. And these are some of the resources. If you want to look at the DrupalCon Dries note, and if you want to look at whatever he demoed, the first link there, the Foster Interactive Seat, this is actually a site template, so you can just download it, install it. It will give you all the context that Dries used. It will give you all the content, and you can start playing with it if you want. My presentation is heavily inspired by my colleague's presentation in Chicago, and I have a link to that one here, which says context is everything. There's a video of the session, and there is, of course, a Dries note video as well. So I finished almost in time. Questions? All good. So either you understood it very well or you did not understand it all, but that's fine with me.
I don't know if you can answer this, and I don't know if it's probably a bit of a unstructured question, but
That's okay.
This makes me think about, like, where's the line between context and structured content?
Yeah.
Can you
So-
answer it for me?
I understand your question, and that's a big question, I would say. And there was one question I wanted to ask Pam as well when she was doing her Drupal CMS thing, that all this is pretty good, but when we actually do enterprise level stuff, we stick to a structure, and then we don't want our editors to go crazy about theirs. So yes, that all is, and I really don't know the answer to that. But as she had been saying, this Drupal CMS and Drupal CMS AI basically reduces the onboarding cost, reduces the barrier to onboard people, and so that's probably where all of this also comes in. But how it will be used in enterprise level projects, I am not very sure of it yet.
I can see this, the sort of clicked a bit at the end there with the final prompt with the structure kind of being like, these are the rules for the template of the page kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if we had like less experienced or less privileged website user, you could have that context already baked in that they don't get to see. So like it's settings that they can't override. So you can work with this page and generate templates using these already existing contexts. Is that how you kind of see it working?
That's probably yes. And I couldn't demo that part where I said that speaker information, for example, is a required information. So I had a video where I did not provide the speaker information. And it then stopped and said, you didn't provide speaker information, give me those details. So it helps us with some kind of validation and structure as well. But probably that's, yeah, you're right, that maybe some kind of pre-built context, and then plugging in and playing those contexts is the future here. But all of this is fairly new. Beta was released just on Monday, so beta 2, sorry, so we are pretty new.